For today's variety show, we have another small cement project. I will show you, this is some of them that I've made and I've kept. I have given away a lot of these as gifts. This one is kind of small, but it's perfect for what I need it for. And here's a smaller one. I just have knives, spoons, and vegetable peelers. This I just used a small Tupperware container, and this one I used a, I think, 1.5 liter soda pop bottle, just the bottom. And here I used a rectangular plastic container, and I put a barrier in the middle, otherwise the items might fall too far down and it would be hard to get them back up. And this is just a wire mesh, and they're held in the middle to connect, the connecting position. I have just used galvanized steel wire, which just means that it will rust a lot slower than normal steel wire. So depending on what you need, you can make it bigger or smaller, and it's useful for me for the kitchen. And I also have some tools that I use, but it could also be useful for an artist and the paint brushes, or a carpenter and various tools. Would be a great idea for a gift. At the moment we're almost at the end of October, which means Christmas is coming up, so it would be a consideration to make some of these as gifts. The amount of cement you use is very little. It would be less than $1 for the cement. So I'm going to move these away out of our little working area. Here is what we are going to do today. This is the cement, about a 50-50 cement mixture of sand and cement powder. I filter the sand because I get it from the river's edge, and many times there's bigger pebbles and roots and leaves. And I also like to filter the cement when I'm doing something so small, just to make sure there are no clumps. So about a 50-50 mix. And here I have the container. This is the base of a plant vase, and it works really well because it's a very thick plastic. You can reuse it many times, and the cement won't stick to it once it has cured into concrete. But you could still put a layer of oil as a lubrication just to make it easier to pop up. Here is the top of a bucket that I've used. I cut it off and I've used it various times for different projects, and it fits in perfectly on this ring. And then the bottom, although it's not a big deal because no one's going to see it, it gives a nice circular pattern. And because it's such a tight fit, there is minimal cement that's going to leak out. So that's what we're doing, and it wasn't quite perfect, this piece here, so there is a small gap, but I've put a piece of masking tape, and there will be a slight difference in terms of this part being smooth, and the masking tape will usually wrinkle a little bit when it gets wet. And here's the cage I made. I'm making this specific one for a neighbor. They have a little variety store where they sell odds and ends, fruits, vegetables, and items for the house. And I made them a previous one, fairly small, a rectangular container, and they're using it to display pens and pencils that they have for sale. And yesterday I asked her if she wanted another one, and she said sure. And then I asked her what size. So this is roughly the size she wanted. Same as before, I have connected the tube, the cylinder, with the galvanized steel wire up here, and down here where it's going to be buried in cement, it's just a regular rusted steel wire just to hold the pieces. And then at the bottom I also have some thicker metal rings to provide a bit of extra support. So that's the background, and here I have two wooden skewers that will hold the piece a little bit elevated so that this is not going to fall to the bottom. Yeah, so let's get started. I am going to pour the cement directly into this container, and it needs to be heavy enough, this base, so that whatever's going to go in it is supported. So I'm just going to spread it out. Looks like a good quantity, and I have a little bit left. Let's see how heavy it is. It's a good weight. I'll just finish off what I have here. Sorry about the scraping noise. There we go. When you make cement, I recommend you wear one of those masks so that the cement powder doesn't get into your nose and your lungs. So now I just want to knock it a little bit just to get the air bubbles to the surface, holding down the container so that the cement doesn't leak out. And I don't see any cement leaking out, so that's good. Yeah, I think that's good enough. And then with the spoon, I'll just rub along the edge, just in case there are air bubbles that are on the sides. Well, it's a circle, so there's no real sides. Or there are infinite sides. There we go. And just going to flatten it out. There we go. That's good enough. Now, I am going to guess that I can go up 3 squares. 1, 2, 3. I can adjust this. There we go. So now I just put it in the cement, making sure it goes far enough in that the bottom is submerged. And I think that's perfect. So what I will do, I will let it cure for, I think I'll let it go for 2 days. Because I want the cement to cure hard enough that it'll be easy to pop out. And I'm going to transfer it to a level platform I have right beside the camera, and that's when I will try and center it as best as I can, and then just double check to make sure it's as straight as possible. What I can do is I can just lift up one edge, put a piece of cardboard or something, and we'll come back in about 2 days and I'll show you the finished project. In this series of segments, I want to go through the beginning steps of this whole process, before getting to the pouring of the cement. So the first step is to decide what kind of container you want to use, how big you want to make it, and how tall. So this time we're going to use this smaller base for a plant vase. And so I was able to measure the circumference using a plastic piece of string and just going around this way, and then I got to how long of a piece of wire mesh I needed, with an extra 2 or 3 squares so that I can fasten the two ends together. And also to mention that this wire mesh, there's a difference. The one that we used with the bigger one, the wire mesh, the wire was thinner, so not as strong, which is why I put 2 layers. But this one, the wire is thicker, so you don't need a double layer. Just a single layer, one piece will be strong enough. Here are some other wires. This one is very flimsy. Here's another one, just leftover remnants of previous little projects. The squares are smaller. This one is actually quite strong, and with the smaller squares it also adds strength. It's a good idea to have it coated in plastic to minimize the chance of rusting. This piece has a little bit of rust, and I would use it if it was going to be buried in cement. It's helpful to hold this concrete together even if it cracks. If you don't get the plastic coated, look for the galvanized, which might be added zinc to it, because that way the steel will rust slower. So when I had the length that I wanted, I decided on the height, and then I cut it from a roll I have using these heavy-duty scissors. And there are 2 factory cuts, which means 2 edges are clean, but with the other edge I just cut around to make sure there are no little pieces that could scratch someone. This end is going to be buried. It's the one that's going in the cement, so it didn't need to be cut. So once you've decided on all that, I like to double up the top edge just to make it stronger, and I am going to use 3 squares to fold over. So here I have a flat edge, and I am just going to go the whole way, the whole piece, so that I get a nice clean bend. And then I'm going to continue just with my fingers, my hands, and then you can use pliers to make it flat, or you can use a hammer just to hammer it down and make it flat. There we go. So it's flat enough, and then we have to make it round. If you're going to do a rectangular container or a square container, you would measure the sides, and then with some kind of tape measure, or even you can use a string, you would bend it and then make the 4 sides. But I want to do this one round, so I am just going to make it round as best as I can, so that the edges, this edge and this edge, they will meet and become a cylinder. So I'll continue with that, and then we'll go to the next step. Okay, next step, you can see I've already started. What I did was I lifted up that edge that I had folded over, just so that I could fit one edge underneath the other edge, and then put it back down with the pliers make sure it's tight, because I think it gives a more sturdy, secure hold than if I were to just put them one on top of the other. So that's what I did, and also I connected the two ends, and let me show you. Here I have just an old piece of wire that's already rusted. I take a little piece, snip it off, and then with the other pliers I make kind of like a staple. Like that, see? Maybe you can't see because it's really small. And then this end is going to be buried in cement, so it's not a big deal that the wire is already rusted. So I put it in, connecting the two ends, and then I just fold it over. And using the pliers, I make sure it's a tight staple. Okay, now on the other end, it is important that you use a galvanized steel wire so that it doesn't rust as quickly, especially if it's going to be used, for example, in the kitchen to put your spoons, spatulas. Many people have used it for their knives. So here I have a wire, a roll of this galvanized steel wire. So the process would be the same. I cut a few of them at a time. I'll just cut two, and same thing. I am going to fold over the two ends to make a staple. And then I put it to connect the two ends to make a cylinder. And I can start the bending with my fingers because the wire is thin enough. But then with the pliers, I make it a tight fit. And it's important, if you're doing a rounded piece, a cylinder, that you kind of curve the wire so that you maintain the circular shape of the cylinder. And I'll show you one more, because this is a little bit different. Where I can't reach with the pliers, I use a different method. So I'll show you. I'll go down a little bit to connect down here. I fold the two edges over, and because the pliers can't fit, what I use is I have this circular piece of wood. I will put it through, and one end is on the platform, and then with the hammer I'll just hammer it down so it's a tight fit. Let me bring that closer. So here you can see the cylinder. You have the wire. It's important to put a few of them up at the top because this is the weakest end. And then right here is where I put another piece to keep this edge closer so that it doesn't come apart. So I'm going to do a few more, and then we'll go to the next step. Moving along to the next step here, let me show you. So I put those staples all along the connecting two ends of the cylinder. And what I started to do is I cut every square. I left one square in the middle, and then I just cut two squares so that I could fold it over to make a base. And I'll go all the way around. So there we have the base, trying to make it flat. And then here I have just a thicker piece of wire that I am going to connect to the cylinder. And then we're ready for the cement. So I'm just going to use some of the rusted wire. I'll attach this piece and then I'll make some cement, and then we'll come back for the final step. Final step now for this first session, but first I want to go back to the one we made. It's been 2 days now. There was a small problem with air bubbles coming up. There was one really big one. The next day after pouring it, I just poked it with the opposite end of a small paintbrush, and it left a gap about 2 centimeters round. So I filled that with some fresh cement, and then this morning I cleaned it. There are 3 more bubbles. So let me show you. I don't know, oh, there's some water. I don't know how well you can see, but there are 3 bubbles that left a gap. So what I want to do, first of all, I cleaned them with a big screw. I just scraped away the weak part of the new concrete, and I want to fill those holes in with this cement I just made. So I'm going to get the cement a little bit wet and just put a few drops of new cement just to try and fill in the imperfection that was left from the last time. And here I'm just going to use this straight edge of this piece of wood to fill in those 3 air bubbles that were created for some reason during the curing process. And I will leave that. Tomorrow we'll open up both of these. I'm going to put it on a stool. And here what I want to do is an idea, an experiment. I have the base of the plant vase, and here I have put sand so that it has a level platform, and I think it'll give a really nice design to have the extra ridge that gets created from this plastic container. And I've put 2 together just to provide support, because I happen to have 2 that are exactly the same. So just making sure that it's flat. And here I want to show you that it's fairly level what I did, because the part where we overlapped the 2 ends, it's a bit thicker, so it wasn't sitting flush. I just put 2 spare pieces of a weaker wire mesh just so that it sits level. So I don't have to worry about putting a counterbalance, which I had to do for the other one. I'll explain in the next segment tomorrow. So here's the cement. Let's get it in. Wasn't sure exactly how much I needed of cement. I don't like to make too much. Let's see how we're doing. And I need a little bit more. Just a little bit, so quick pause and we'll come back. Okay, we're back. I have a little bit more cement just to fill up the container. There we go. Sorry about that. Let's check it out, see if we have enough or maybe too much. So I'm just poking with the spoon, see if there's any air bubbles. There's one right here, it's coming up. Also to get the edge. There we go. And I'm going to knock it a little bit. Looks like there's a little bit too much. Let me remove 1 tablespoon. See how that is. 1 more tablespoon. And then to level it, take some kind of straight edge that goes across completely, and just knocking, making sure that your straight edge is on both sides of the container, and then just level it out, and you can see where you need more cement. This surface is not quite level, so it's giving a skewed result, but I'll put it on the level platform. And doing this process also, there are air bubbles coming up. One last time. Alright, and the extra cement I'll put back into the bucket, and I'll use it for a quick patch-up job, cleaning the sides. And then, hoping there's not too much displacement, I am going to put the cylinder that we've created into the cement. Just going back and forth, pushing down a little bit. Making sure the bottom gets buried. There we go. And I'll use the spoon just to flatten it out, and I'm pushing down a little bit with the spoon. There we go. And slight knocking of it. And there's some that got displaced, so I can scoop it up. And now I put it on the platform, and we'll come back tomorrow. Alright, it's the next day after those previous segments, going through all the steps necessary to make one of these. It's the smaller one is sitting right beside the camera. It looks great, but I want to give it an extra day so that this concrete can cure, because I really want to have the impression on the edges of it. So we'll just wait one more day, and tomorrow we will see how it turned out. This is the first one we started. It's been 3 days that the concrete has had to cure, and I want to open it to see how it looks. I also want to share with you one of the techniques that I use. I take this paint brush that I now use for cement projects, so I mean I will still use it for painting, but knowing that I will contaminate the paint with little bits of cement concrete dust, I will put the paint into another container with the quantity that I will use, so that I am not contaminating the whole can of paint. So anyway, with this I get it wet, and then I will just brush along the fresh concrete to give it a smooth edge. And because there's something that I call a foam that appears at the very top of new concrete, and I prefer to remove that to have a smoother finish. So that's what I wanted to add, and I've done that also with the one that we will see tomorrow. So now I want to remove this from its container. So first I will turn it upside down, and then very gently just lift up, prying it up gently as possible. Here, there we go, it pops up. And I forgot to mention I have a glove because I got a fairly serious cut this morning, and I have a band-aid over the cut, and I don't want any concrete dust to get into my cut. So check it out. This is a beautiful finish, exactly as the bottom of the pot holder. Yeah. So now I'll turn it over, and to remove the ring container, here is the masking tape. Should be fairly easy because it's been wet for 3 days, and regular spraying with water from my spray bottle, and this should come off fairly easily. And these two pieces I can clean and reuse many times. Here is a piece that came off from the bottom edge, which was expected with any cement that did go underneath this container. And here's some more. I can just break it off. It's a little bit of waste, but I can use this as filler for another project. So let me get that. Okay, now here what I want to do is just to give it a nice finish. What I will do with this sharp edge, thin edge of a broken steak knife, I will just grind away a little bit. Now if you do this the next day, it's much easier. I'm going to use the serrated edge because it's been 3 days and the concrete is now fairly hard, that it won't shave away as easy as it would have if I was doing this the day after having poured the cement. So I'm just going around. It's important to have a proper work area because there is some of this concrete dust falling. So I've made it full circle. And it looks pretty good. I'm just going to I'll fine tune it, make it a little bit smoother, and this will be what I'm doing. And I also have a used piece of sandpaper that will help make it smooth. But let's see what's on this top side. And because I painted it with water and the paintbrush, there is not that top layer of concrete foam, so I don't have to worry about shaving that off because I did it during the 3 days of waiting. Most important on the first 24 hours. So I'm just with the same straight edge shaving off that extra little lip raised edge of concrete that collects on the container when you're moving it around, shaking it, knocking it. So I just want a clean finish all the way around, and then I will go through the same thing with the sandpaper. And the other issue we had was the air bubbles, and they have come out. I mean, it's not perfect, but unless you know what to look for, you would never know that there were those air bubbles the day before. So that's it for this project, and I'll give you an example of what you can use it for. There's a big wooden spoon. Here are two of the main tools I use, and it's perfect. Depends on what you want. Another idea I came up with was for a makeup artist. You have lots of different tools if you're a makeup artist, or if you have makeup for yourself. It can be by your vanity mirror, maybe a smaller one, not quite so high, or even a work desk at your house or at your work. A teacher on the teacher's desk would be kind of cool to have one of these. Anyway, so that's it for this segment. One more segment tomorrow when we remove the containment for the one that we did yesterday. All right, final segment. We get to reveal this piece that we went through all the steps. I just want to show you here as I demonstrated at the beginning, but I didn't explain. Because of my outdoor kitchen, I keep all these two covered that have my kitchen tools. Real convenient because lots of dust and lots of critters. I'll move these back. Here I would just want to explain what I mentioned about the barrier in the middle, and it's useful if the barrier also gets set into the base at the bottom, makes it more sturdy. And I did like right angle right here and a right angle right here. And as an experiment, I just put cement also, but the cement's not necessary. You can use that galvanized steel wire. And the reason I explained is because this piece, for example, if the middle barrier wasn't there, it would fall too low and it would be a bit more difficult to remove. So that's why you want to have this middle barrier. Just makes things easier. And I want to show you, I was able to make this a lot smoother so it looks really nice. I got it wet under the tap a couple of times yesterday to slow down the curing process. The slower that cement cures into concrete, the stronger the final piece of concrete is. If you want to paint anything like this, I suggest you wait at least 7 days, or better yet, wait a full month, because I have read it takes 28 days for cement to fully cure into concrete. I don't know if 28 days is necessary for something this small, but as a guideline for you to wait that much time before you paint it. Or you can also use a water sealant spray or something that you paint on to protect it, especially if you're going to use it in the kitchen and put your wet utensils after having washed them. It will protect the cement for longer. So this is also moving out of the way, so we have a workspace for the final piece, which is right here. And I have a container because in here is sand that was holding the base container. So I'm going to turn it upside down. The first piece comes off easy, which I used just because I had the exact same plastic container. And I think it provided a bit more support, and I want to gently remove. I'm going to put it this way because it's this container that has the sand, and to try and minimize any sand that's going to fly. I'll put it this way. I'm just knocking to try and release the concrete from the container. Make it easier to lift up. It's had 2 days to cure, so it should be strong enough to withstand that little bit of banging. And there we go. Here is the sand. I can put that. I didn't need the container after all. And then we have to remove this base of a plant vase so that we can get to the bottom and see what the final impression looks like. Should be also fairly easy to come up. Would be easier, as we discussed, to paint a layer of lubrication. I just normally use a vegetable cooking oil that I have that I don't use for cooking because it's vegetable oil, and vegetable oil is not as healthy as we were told many years ago. The science has found out that it's not the best oil to cook with. Cook with butter or virgin olive oil or a virgin coconut oil. So there's a little bit of cement on the rim of the plastic plant vase base, which is preventing me from removing it. Let's see. I'll give it a knock as well, just to try and release it. There we go. Okay, yeah, now I can push the side in, the rim, the edge, to release that little bit of overflow cement. See if I can lift it up now. Trying not to damage this base because I have an idea to use it again for a candle holder. We did another video yesterday making a very simple candle holder using the leftover cement from another project that we will continue after this one. It's a paper towel holder, fairly easy to do and also useful. Also, it can be used to put toilet paper rolls. Many people have in their bathroom one of those tubes to hold the spare rolls of toilet paper. Now, this is a bit more difficult than I thought it would be, but that's what happens sometimes with cement projects. And unfortunately, I am doing a little bit of damage to the plastic base. But that happens. It's a fairly inexpensive investment. Oh, I think it released. Come on. Alright, let me try this one again. So I'm going to turn off the video because it's taking longer than I thought. We'll be back. Okay, it took about 2 more minutes or less of gentle prying to get this off, and there is a tiny bit of damage, but not on the inside part. So here it is. Get the nice pattern on the bottom, and there is a bit of overflow here that I want to clean up, and I will do that now just by scraping with this thin edge, which is the broken blade of a steak knife. And I'm going to use the serrated edge because it's been drying for 2 days, so it's strong enough, first of all, to withstand, and second of all, that the other edge wouldn't do the job that I want it to do. So I just scraping, trying to be a combination of aggressive and gentle. Aggressive to remove that lip of cement that was turned into concrete, but gentle because it still only had 2 days to cure, and it could crack if I am too aggressive. So I'm going to go full circle. I want to do this slowly. I'm going to go all the way around, make it nice and even, and then I'll get it wet a couple of times during the day, and probably again tomorrow, just to slow down that curing process. And once I am done with this knife, I will take a used piece of sandpaper, and the exact same as I did with the other one yesterday, I will just make the edge smoother. So that's it for the process. I hope you try it out. It's a fun little project. Lots of different combinations of wire you could use and different bases. And instead of using the wire mesh, you could also use a PVC tube, depending on how wide you want it, how tall you want it. Many times in someone's home there are leftover pieces of this tube, and it's a very sturdy combination of chemicals that it will last a long time. I don't recommend you do it with wood cylinder because wood usually doesn't last as long as concrete, but a wire mesh will, and the PVC tube will. So that's my recommendation. That's our DIY cement project, and now I'm going to finish this and then get to the paper towel holder, which you can watch if you're curious on the next video. Thanks for watching.